He was born online, a faceless man in a black suit who hides in the shadows of trees. At first it was just a creepypasta, a ghost story whispered in the digital ether, a campfire tale for the internet age. But soon the stories became sightings, grainy photographs and shaky videos, flooding forums and social media. The myth, fed by a collective imagination, began to cross the fragile boundary into real life. From the quiet corners of online forums to a shocking real-world crime that horrified a nation, this is the story of Slenderman, the creature the internet accidentally brought to life. It began on a summer day in 2009, not in a cursed wood or an ancient crypt, but on a humor website called Something Awful. A user named Eric Knudsen, under the alias Victor Surge, entered a Photoshop contest. The challenge was simple: create paranormal images. Knudsen took 2 black and white photographs of children at play and digitally inserted a tall, unnaturally thin figure in the background. He was dressed in a black suit, his face a featureless void of white. To these eerie images, Knudsen added cryptic captions, fragments of a story. He named his creation the Slenderman. He described him as a malevolent entity, one who stalks and abducts people, particularly children. He was an empty vessel, a blank canvas onto which our deepest fears could be projected. The internet, a vast and fertile ground for modern folklore, did the rest. The seeds Knudsen planted grew into a forest of terror. Slenderman was not owned by anyone, and so he became owned by everyone. He was a piece of open-source horror, adopted and expanded upon by an army of anonymous storytellers. Fan art, short stories, and complex narratives began to appear, building a mythology brick by digital brick. He was no longer just a figure in a photograph. He had a history, a purpose. He haunted the dark woods and abandoned buildings that exist in the periphery of our safe suburban lives. He could stretch his limbs to impossible lengths, sprout tendrils from his back, and his presence was said to induce a unique paranoia, a slender sickness characterized by coughing fits, memory loss, and a creeping sense of dread. The mythos deepened with the arrival of web series like Marble Hornets. Presented as found footage, a collection of tapes from a student filmmaker who became obsessed with a strange figure tormenting him, it blurred the lines between fiction and reality. The shaky camera work, the distorted audio, the fleeting glimpses of the faceless man. It felt chillingly authentic. For millions of viewers watching on flickering screens in darkened rooms, Slenderman wasn't just a story anymore. He was an experience. He was the static that crackled through their speakers, the shadow they thought they saw at the edge of their vision. He represented a very modern fear, the fear of being watched, not by a ghost in a haunted house, but by an omnipresent unknown entity in a world saturated by digital eyes. He was the perfect monster for an age of surveillance, a symbol of the faceless forces that track our data and watch our lives unfold from a distance. But the human mind is a powerful and sometimes dangerous thing. For some, the line between this shared fictional universe and the real world began to dissolve completely. The myth, so carefully constructed and so widely believed, was about to claim its first real victims. In the quiet town of Waukesha, Wisconsin, 2 12-year-old girls, Anissa Wire and Morgan Geyser, became deeply enmeshed in the Slenderman legend. They spent hours on the creepypasta wiki, absorbing every detail, every story. In their minds, Slenderman was not a creation of Victor Surge. He was a real living being. He was a powerful entity who commanded their loyalty, who lived in a mansion in the nearby Nicollet National Forest. And they believed he had made them a terrible demand. To prove their worthiness, to become his proxies, they had to make a sacrifice. They had to kill someone. On May 31st, 2014, they lured their friend Peyton Leutner, also 12, into the woods. In a clearing under the dappled sunlight, they attacked her, stabbing her 19 times. They told her they were going to get help, but instead, they walked away, leaving her for dead, intending to begin their journey to Slenderman's mansion. What followed was a miracle of survival and a national tragedy. Peyton, against all odds, managed to crawl out of the woods to a nearby path where she was found by a cyclist. She survived, but the psychological and physical scars would remain forever. The crime sent a shockwave across the country. How could this happen? How could a fictional character, an internet meme, drive 2 children to commit such a horrific act of violence? The ensuing investigation and trial peeled back the layers of obsession. The girls spoke of Slenderman with a chilling conviction. They feared that if they didn't obey his command, he would harm them or their families. For them, the digital ghost had stepped out of the screen and into their world. Their defense attorneys argued that they were suffering from a shared delusional disorder, a folie à deux, in which the intricate fictions of the internet had become their indistinguishable reality. They weren't evil, their lawyers contended, but lost, trapped in a story they could no longer control. The case became a stark and terrifying illustration of the power of belief, the dark side of a connected world where myths can spread like a virus, infecting vulnerable minds. It was a modern-day witch trial, where the demon was not born of ancient superstition, but coded in pixels and shared with a click. The Waukesha stabbing forced a reckoning. The internet, once a space for boundless creation, was now seen as a potential source of real-world danger. The community that had nurtured the Slenderman myth was horrified. Eric Knudsen, the creator, released a statement expressing his deep sadness for the tragedy. The Something Awful forums and creepypasta sites were flooded with messages of shock and condolence. The game was over. The story had become too real. Slenderman was no longer just a spooky figure for late-night entertainment. He was now inextricably linked to a brutal, tangible crime. He was a testament to the fact that ideas, even fictional ones, have consequences. A story, when told with enough conviction and heard by the right ears, can take on a life of its own, reaching out from the ether and leaving its mark on the physical world. Today, Slenderman has largely retreated back into the digital shadows from whence he came. His cultural moment has passed, replaced by new memes, new fears, new online legends. Yet his legacy lingers. He stands as a dark monument in the history of the internet, a chilling reminder of our collective capacity to build monsters, and the terrifying possibility that one day, those monsters might answer back. He is the whisper in the static, the tall man in the trees, the faceless fear that we created together and then, for a brief horrific moment, lost control of. He is the ghost in the machine, a story that proves that the most terrifying phantoms are not the ones that haunt old houses, but the ones we carry in our own minds, born from the flickering light of a screen and brought to life by the simple, powerful, and sometimes deadly act of belief.